Super check portion here.
Yeah.
Good idea.
Just leave it so if you pay for other people come, so you can break.
It's a good day for this rainy afternoon.
Yeah.
Either this or working
Some light programs use both. SCP qualified recognition.
All right, I'm recording.
Okay, let's get started, folks.
We're going to start now.
I'm Larry Serra, N6NC. Welcome to the Southern California Contest Club Decennial Sweepstakes Clinic. We're privileged to have, decennial.
I had decennial, but I took some drugs for that.
We are privileged to have with us today three of our very good contest operators from the Southwest here. In fact, I have a little spiel. This is, if you don't know, Dave, K6LL, Dave Hackadorian from Yuma, who's a former Californian. He's from Yuma now. I'm sure you've heard Dave on the air regularly in virtually all the contests. In sweepstakes, Dave won the Southwest Division High Power Single Op on both modes for 13 straight years, from 1989 to 2001. In 2002, he switched to Unlimited class, and he's won first place nationally in that category on both modes for 4 straight years, 2002 to 2005. He's also won the SCCC Perpetual Sweepstakes Trophy every year since its inception in 1997. That's our SCCC High Power Sweepstakes Trophy. John Barcroft, K6AM, in the middle, is also a very well-known contester. John was first licensed in 1962 and held the call WA6ZJC until 1996. He holds 9-band DXCC Challenge, that's a 2500 level, and top honor roll. In addition to DXing, he's an avid contester, having operated at ZF1A, ZF2AM, Charlie 5 Zulu, King Hotel 7 X-Ray, W6KP, and W6YI, and he has won several overall first place awards, as well as, I think we've figured coming up here, at least 4 Field Day national championships.
Well, that was the club.
Club, W6 Papatanka, but John ran the operation. John's a former on-air radio personality, and now he works behind the scenes in broadcast engineering at Clear Channel Radio in San Diego. To John's left, we have Ken Weidlitz, K6LA, whose call I'm sure everyone knows. Ken holds an extra license and has been licensed since 1965 when he entered his first contest, Field Day, and then made 50 QSOs in his first CW sweepstakes. Since then, he has improved his contesting skills considerably, with 2 first places, 14 top 10 national and regional in CW and phone sweepstakes. In addition, he's scored first place 5 times, second 4 times, and third 3 times in the California QSO Party, 3 first places World and Continental in the ARL DX CW, and 8 top 10 places in the ARL phone and CW DX contests. 3 first places World and 6th area in the CW WPX contest, 3 first and 2 seconds in Zone 6 and 6th area in the CW CQ Worldwide contest. He's traveled to many DX stations to operate and has built his own DX superstation at VY2 Tango Tango on Prince Edward Island. When he's not contesting, Ken is a lawyer and an investment advisor. He recently won the Best Article Award for his September 06 QST article on learning from your log checking reports, which we may talk about today at the end of our session. And also, I have to say, I've had the pleasure of operating on winning first-class teams with all 3 of these gentlemen. Ken and Dave and I did 6 Echo 2 Tango from Mexico, and Ensenada, Mexico in 1995, and we won the ARL DX World Multi-2 from there. In the least expensive DX expedition anybody's done in the history in the last 50 years, I think. And John, I've done numerous W6 Papa Tango Field Day contest from the Point Loma station. And so I know them all very well, and it's really a pleasure to have them here today. We sort of decided to have a little bit of an agenda here that will start for pre-contesting, during the contest, CW and SSB variants on the contest, then after the contest material. So if we can, why don't we let everybody get through their presentations and then jot down and save questions for after we're finished, okay? And why don't we start off with Dave, okay?
You want to do the before the contest
Sure.
part?
Sure. And why don't you say your bit on it and then let the other two comment, all right?
Okay,
Is that good?
sounds good to me. Good afternoon, everybody. Before the sweepstakes, I think one thing to keep in mind about sweepstakes is that the first 3 or 4 hours of the contest are critical. And if you fall behind during that time, it seems to be virtually impossible to make up lost ground during that time. So you have to hit the ground running. And it's no time to be learning your logging software or overcoming RFI glitches in the station or anything like that. So I think it's important to establish a checklist to cover everything that you need to do to get the station ready. And I put things from my checklist that I use for my particular station here on the first sheet of my handout. And you know, many of them are obvious, and a lot of them are tailored to my station, and they wouldn't apply to you. But it's important to generate something like this. So I would encourage everybody to make a checklist like that for your own station. Like on mine, I've got set the computer to exact time. Well, that's something that everybody needs to do. If you're using a Windows program, it's very easy to do. You hit the synchronize button and you're good to go. Download the latest SuperCheck partial files for call sign recognition. Set up all your voice memories, and your CW memories, all that stuff before the contest ever begins. Make sure they all sound good. Make sure the box is set at the right delay and all that stuff. I think it's important to actually enter some QSOs into your logging program. Make sure everything's working. You can just simulate some call signs or use call signs that you know will be active in the contest. Make sure your database is working. Make sure the SuperCheck partial is working. Do all this ahead of time. And one thing that's not on the list is that the NCCC now on probably Thursday and Friday night will have a practice session. I think it's very beneficial to participate in that practice session. Use high power. If you're going to run high power, fire up the amplifier, get on there, and just make sure everything works. I'm not going to go through every one of these. Many of them are obvious and just have to be done. If you're going to be in a phone contest, it's good to have some hard candy and stuff around, you know, just obvious type of things. Make sure all the settings on the radio are correct. You don't want to have split frequencies and be transmitting on 20 and listening on 15 when the contest starts. I've got a few things at my house. There's a palm tree that drops down and gets tangled up in the sloper, so I have to make sure I trim that palm tree every year before the contest starts. I think many of these are pretty obvious. I just won't go over them. Prepare an off time sheet so you can keep track of your off times. Off times are in 30-minute increments. And one thing to keep in mind is when you do the subtraction on an off time, say for example your last contact is at 0000, you can't make another contact until 0031. There has to be 30 clear minutes of no contacts before it counts as a valid off time. So when you do the subtraction, you have to subtract one more to make it a valid off time. That's something that I have forgotten in the past. And you get nickeled and dimed at the end. Fortunately, they don't disqualify the whole off time, but they add up those minutes at the end and you lose some QSOs. That happened to me last year, in fact. So it's something to keep in mind. I'm not going to go over every one of these. I think they'll probably duplicate what some of the other guys are going to talk about. So at this point, let me turn it over to John.
Okay. Well, I think Dave covered the basic stuff. you certainly want to get your station ready to go. There's kind of two levels of getting ready for sweepstakes. If you want to do well at sweepstakes, or if you want to win at sweepstakes. So basically, this is the stuff that you need to do to do well, which means pretty much everybody wants to do well. So you want to have the best signal you possibly can. Get your antennas worked on well in advance. If you're putting up a new antenna, get it up. Get the station in absolute tip-top shape. And this will help you not only your contesting, but your DXing and, God forsake, some sort of an emergency where you're called upon to be a real hand, and to save somebody's life. Set your station up for maximum efficiency also. Get all the ergonomics set right. You want to have the radio where we can just do everything without a whole lot of moving around. Make sure that you're set up for automatic switching. So if you want to switch bands and whatnot, you don't have to throw a lot of switches. It's just basic, getting a contest station set up for good efficiency. And then the logging program is important too. Let's say that you're a CT user and somebody says, CT is old stuff, you need right log. So you say, okay, I'll try right log. So you load in right log and you start using it in your sweepstakes contest, and your goal is to do well or to win. You will fall flat on your butt because you don't know enough about right log. Right log is a very sophisticated program, as is N1MM or any of the other ones, or TR log or whatever you have to use. It's no time to be learning the program. You want to learn the program months in advance. So use the program that you've already mastered in the actual contest. And then if you think you need to upgrade to a different program, go ahead and do it, but don't do it in an important contest. Spend enough time that you feel really comfortable and you've already made all the mistakes that you're going to make. Get rid of the man-made noise is another thing that I don't know if Dave mentioned, but television sets, computers, power lines, all that stuff. A lot of it you can actually control. I turn my television set off and my noise level goes way down on the low bands. So I turn off my heater control in my air conditioning system, and all of a sudden I don't have this big thing. So get all the noise sources tracked down, get them turned off or fixed as best as you can. The other thing it is, get your speed up. If you want to be a good contester, it takes a lot of practice. So either play every single contest and get your speed up, or use the training programs or something. But if you're talking about CW, get your CW speed up by just working at it. And on phone, you just learn how to talk really, really fast. Way to do that, of course, is just to get in as many contests as you can. And then just before the contest, get plenty of rest. Make sure you got all your food and everything lined up, and don't eat a big, huge meal that make you sleepy, and you're ready to go. Okay, before the contest.
Okay, a couple of things, Dad. I guess one would be with regard to setting goals. And I think it's useful to have an idea of where you want to be at various points in the contest. You should make your goals realistic, but on the high side. And a good way to set goals, number one, to look at your prior scores, because you always want to do better than you did the last time. And also to take a look at the line scores in the QST, in the ARRL website. And you can get an idea of how your competition wound up on a band-by-band basis. And then you can also look through the CQ contest archives from prior years, and some guys post an hour-by-hour breakdown. So take a look at who you think is the competition. Take a look at how you did last year. I always print out my last year's rate sheet and have it right next to the key, and at the end of each hour, I'll make sure I note where I am, both for that hour and cumulatively. Another thing that I find is that at the beginning of a contest, especially one that's important to me like sweepstakes, I get very nervous. I kind of start to shake a little bit. My fingers are all over the keyboard. And I find what helps reduce that is to listen to last year's contest for a few minutes before I get going. So I record all of my contests, and I just pop in the CD from last year's sweepstakes and run it for 10 or 15 minutes and just listen. And it helps bring your speed up a little bit if you haven't been on the air for a little while. It gets you into what the exchange is, and it kind of gets you going so you know what to expect. The last thing is, after each contest, especially the sweepstakes, I'll make some notes to myself for what mistakes I made or how I thought I could have improved that particular contest. And then before the next contest, I'll look back and read the notes that I made to myself and try not to make the same mistakes. It's also useful once you have operated this contest for a number of years to look back and look at your notes for that point in the sunspot cycle, because you're going to approach the contest differently at the peak of the sunspot cycle than you're going to approach it this year. And apart from what everybody else said, that's about all I have to add for before the contest.
Thank you, Dave. Okay. Operating the contest. During the contest, let me start this off. But John or Kim, if you have thoughts that pop into your mind as we go through this, just chime in, and maybe we can. Because some of these, some of my approaches are different than other people would do. As I mentioned, the first few hours are critical. So really hit it hard. Don't be late. You'll never make it up. I do not work dupes in the sweepstakes. Some people work all dupes, but I tell them to go away unless they tell me that they're not in the log. If somebody starts to argue that, hey, you're not in my log, then I will work them immediately and don't give them an argument. But other than that, I'll chase them off. Don't pay any attention to other people's QSO numbers. Some people have been known to play games with those numbers, mind tricks, and also you don't know who's had off time yet. So it can be mentally troublesome if somebody gives you a higher number. Just ignore it. As far as off time in the contest, I like to take my off time all in one chunk, and I've got 1 a.m. to 7 a.m. here. That's Arizona time. California, you might consider 12 to 6. Some people like to leave additional time if there are equipment problems and not take it all in one chunk. I don't know what you guys do, but...
Well, let me address two things that you said. One is with regard to working dupes, and I think what you said applies to phone contests, but not necessarily CW contests. I'll tend to tell somebody in a phone contest, oh, you worked me before, you were number so-and-so, I was your number so-and-so. And the program's going to make it very obvious to you. In CW, I think you tend to have fewer casual operators in CW, and if somebody dupes me in CW, I'll just work them. The other thing with regard to off time is in phone, I take the off time all in one 6-hour block. In CW, my feeling is that there's a finite number of stations to work, and that finite number is much lower than in phone. Because in phone, when things get slow Sunday afternoon, you can find guys who aren't necessarily contesters, and you're begging for QSO as anybody anywhere in the United States or Canada, and somebody will call you, and you can talk them through the exchange. In CW, that's not going to happen. So in CW, I like to take more half-hour breaks. Maybe a 4-hour chunk at night so you can get in a good 3-hour sleep time. And then I like to take them just a half an hour at a time during the day, and also save some time for Sunday afternoon when sometimes things get so slow you just got to shake your head and walk away for a little bit to to be able to go on. So with regard to that, my strategy, at least with regard to CW, is different.
You like to stay up late or get up early?
Well, typically, I find the rate, at least for me, is never as good on Sunday as it is when I stop operating Saturday night. So I like to stay as long as I can Saturday night, and it's hard because the rate will drop to 45, and at 45 you go, oh man, this afternoon it was 80, it was 100, and now it's only 45. But the next day, I find inevitably it never gets back up that high. So I try to push it till local time, 1 o'clock, maybe a little bit later, if the rate's still above whatever the threshold level is that I've set. And I think when you're setting goals, that's one thing you want to keep in mind is what's the lowest you're going to go on that last 10 meter before you say it's time for a break. And what I've found in the last few years is sometimes after an hour and a half I wake up and I'm 2 hours into an off time and I say, okay, I'll get on for, well, it doesn't make a difference how long you get on for, because your off time has to be 30 minutes, but your on time can be 10 minutes. So I'll get on and see if there's anybody I haven't worked. And if I work 5 or 6 guys and it takes 10 minutes, I'll say, okay, that's all the signals I'm hearing. I'll go back and take the rest of my 4-hour break for now. And of course it also depends on where you are on the sunspot cycle. 20 meters is not going to be opening up really early this year. So, and 40 meters earlier in the day, or early in the morning, who knows how good it's going to be to the East Coast. So I think there's no hard and fast rule.
Another thing that comes into play at my station is my antennas are so low that I'm not extremely loud on the low band, so I like to maximize all my daylight hours. A tri-bander at 50 feet works pretty well in sweepstakes on 20, 15, and 10. But on 40 and 80, when your antennas are down at 50 feet, that doesn't work so well. So it's one other thing that comes into play at my place. A few other items here. Leave very short pauses between your CQs so that nobody can tune by you while you're listening. Maybe just 3 seconds or so, if that. Another trick, VE8 is typically one of the hardest to get multipliers. Jay is up there and he does a lot of search and pounce. So what I like to do is, if I haven't worked VE8 yet, just point the antenna at 045 while you're running. And you'll still be plenty loud in the States, and you'll bring Jay way up off the side of your null there.
Let me add just a couple things with regard to VE8, VY1. Jay has indicated there are certain frequencies that he likes. He likes 027 or 227. So if you haven't worked him and you're on CW, look at 14027 or 21027. For phone, look at 21227 or 21327 or 14227, because if he's calling CQ, the odds are that's where he's going to be or close to it.
What call the thing?
VY1JA, and on phone there's also VY1MB that's active, but the frequencies don't apply. The frequencies more apply to J. And then with regard to, and I think this doesn't only apply to VY1, although typically that's the toughest section to get. If Sunday afternoon I'm looking for a section, I'll re-record my CQ message. CQ, sweepstakes, looking especially for VY1 or for North Dakota. And occasionally, a casual guy, say if it's North Dakota, will tune by you and give you a call. I don't know whether he would anyway, but on occasion it's worked. The other thing that happens on occasion is somebody will be tuning by you and say, oh, you need North Dakota? There's a North Dakota, he's on 21320. And my take on that is that doesn't put you in the assisted class. If somebody tells you something, you aren't expected to cover your ears. So
I operate the, I've operated, for the past 4 years, I've operated unlimited, which means you have packet hookup. Another thing that happens there is that you'll see a spot occasionally, K6LA needs North Dakota. You'll get spotted that way, and there may be
That might
unlimited,
explain it.
unlimited adopt in North Dakota, or somebody using packet in North Dakota. That will, or somebody will, hey, I know where there's a North Dakota, we'll come down and tell you, you know. There's all kinds of things that can happen. While we're talking about looking for multipliers, let me put in a plug for the unlimited category. The unlimited category is high power, where you're hooked up to Telnet or packet. And it's a lot of fun. There's a tremendous amount of spotting activity on sweepstakes. You wouldn't think so, being a domestic contest, but the spots are like a fire hose. And it's really a lot of fun, especially in a slow contest like Sweepstakes CW on Sunday afternoon. It adds another dimension to the contest, really. And if you're thinking of adding to the club's score, the unlimited category will definitely increase your score. I mean, you won't have to worry about the multipliers that will appear on your screen. You can go work them and then come back and continue to run. In fact, I think most of the Northern Cal Contest Club now are running unlimited, as far as I know. Everybody up there who's running high power is running unlimited for the good of the club score. So it's a lot of fun, for what it's worth. But there's no low power category in with packet assistance. So if you're running low power, you're probably better off doing single lock. Next item I've got on the list is coming back to a fragment. Sometimes you get a big pile up going and you'll hear November Delta Bravo, but you won't get the prefix. What I like to do is just go back and give November Delta Bravo just give them the exchange and see what happens. And chances are you'll come back. I think it speeds things up, and I think it's a good thing. I don't know about you guys.
I agree.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Okay, good. An important thing to remember is you've got to maintain accuracy in the sweepstakes, especially on CW. The scores are so tightly grouped that every mistake you make really hurts you. And if you look at last year's log checking report, and I'm sure Ken will cover this in depth later, you'd be amazed at how many mistakes you actually make. Even when you start with a good, clean database from last year, updated with your last year's errors, you still make mistakes. And so you really have to focus on that. It's when you think that you're operating at a rate of 30 QSOs an hour sometimes on Sunday, and you're making mistakes and losing even those QSOs. I mean, accuracy is deadly important.
Could you
Let-
go
let-
on? Go ahead.
I was just going to add, I found that I'll use the super check partial, but I won't use a database built from my last year's log anymore, because I've made, in looking at my log checking report, I've made too many mistakes thinking I heard what was appearing in the QSO line from last year's database, but it changed. And it could be any of the data, because guys will use different checks, they'll move and be in a different section, they'll be in a different classification. So I don't use that anymore. The super check partial is useful, but I just found that too many of my errors were relying on last year's log, even after cleaning it up. So I think...
You mean I have to do all that typing?
Well, if it works for you, it works for you. But take a look at your log checking report afterwards and see what percentage of mistakes were from last year's logs and what percentage of mistakes were just hearing errors. Or sometimes somebody else sending error. But
So you've gone back and where, like, you have the wrong section copied, you verified that the section you put down was from the database?
Yep.
And really?
Dave, just for the people who don't know, explain how the database works. It fills in.
The database fills in the blanks. Typically, you use check in section, the year first licensed, and the ARRL section. You can't use the serial number, of course, and you wouldn't want to use the precedence because that changes from year to year. But it's nice to have, I think, it's nice to have the section all filled in and the year license filled in case it's one of those super weak signals. You can kind of verify that what you're hearing in your ear is what you're seeing pre-filled in. But as Ken points out, that's a two-edged sword. So, and
Which programs offer that feature?
I know TR Log does,
Right
Log does, and 1MM does also. So,
And if you're gonna do that, make sure that you take your log checking report from last year's contest and make the database from last year's contest accurate. Because you don't wanna import known bad data.
right.
Which you can do in unlimited class packet. It's amazing how many misposted call signs are on packet too.
Yes.
Be careful about that.
Yep.
Don't get something better than you just click on it and say, oh, that's good.
My only experience with that is when I went back and forth between Orange and San Diego, an awful lot of people got San Diego and Orange mixed up because they were using databases. And you could tell the ones that were because of the blue moon.
That'll show up in your log checking report too,
Yeah.
as errors on the receiving end.
Yeah,
So
it's
you
the
can tell.
the ones that got my report wrong. So you gotta be real careful. Just don't get complacent and just let it fill in your log for you. Make sure you look at it every time. Yeah, that's what he said.
I think it's important, living out in the west here, our population density is relatively low compared to the East Coast. So it's to our advantage really to call CQ. I mean, we've got a tremendous, especially on the higher bands, where the skip zone is long and we can hear the entire high density East Coast area from Chicago to to Maine really. And all they can hear is Rocky Mountain states and California. So it's a tremendous one-way advantage that we have. So I think it's important, even if your signal is not all that great, to call CQ. Especially on Sunday, the unlimited category is really getting to be more and more popular, and you'll be spotted. And I noticed last year that as a new station is spotted, there's a tremendous pileup on him. And I was even having trouble breaking through some of those pileups with my lower S&P antenna last year. So if you have a weak signal, calling CQ, especially on Sunday, can be a lot of fun because you definitely will get spotted as fresh meat. And everybody will descend on your frequency and you've got a super pileup going. It can be a real blast. I like to use the highest band that is open. The situation you want to avoid is, say on 20 meters at the start of the contest, where the people in Illinois are beaming east, and the East Coast is hearing them, and we're out here woofing in the wind. You want to avoid that situation, so if you can, if 15 meters is open, that's where you want to be. You want to be where the skip is long, and you don't want those twos working the nines. You want the twos working the sixes. So that's something to keep in mind there. I don't worry about multipliers until Sunday, unless you happen to stumble across a pileup of a good one or something like that. Multipliers in sweepstakes, except for the very rarest ones, usually take care of themselves. Certainly in the unlimited category, they do take care of themselves. So you don't have to worry about them ever, really. As far as frequency management, I like to tune off to the side every now and then and see who's running above and below me. Just keep kind of a situational awareness on the frequency. And you want to stay centered between the two guys around you, but you don't want to get too far away. You don't want to leave room for another station to fire up. Then you really get squeezed. So I like to snuggle up to somebody, a good, loud, clean signal. Kind of snuggle up to them a little bit to where it's comfortable, but where nobody would even think of sneaking in between you. So that's another thing to keep in mind.
What kind of filter are you receiving on in that situation when you're running?
Just stock, 2.4, 2.4.
You keep it wide?
Yeah, I've tried narrower filters, and to me, to my ear, they hurt intelligibility more than they help on the QRM rejection, on voice anyway. 2.4 on sideband, of course, and CW Usually a pair of 500, sometimes a 500 with a 200, cascaded like that.
No wider than 500 on CW.
No wider than 500, no, you start to hear too much. Yeah. Even at 500, you have to work the writ. There are a lot of Sunday drivers in the sweepstakes, and you have to tune, I think, at least 300 or 400 kilohertz, 300 or 400 hertz each side, or you're going to miss people. So it's amazing how far off some people can be. I don't know what the deal is, whether they've got their RIT tuned off, or they're using wide filters and they've got a non-musical ear or whatever, but people will call way off. Let's see, what else have we got here? You want to use a voice keyer, of course, on sideband, and it's important to automate your exchange, too. You don't want to be saying Bravo K6LL 59 Arizona 2,500 times, so automate that one also.
Let me just throw in that at the beginning of the contest, I avoid using a voice keyer except for calling CQ, because the rate is so high that I don't want anybody to, it's obvious when you're using a voice keyer, and it's obvious when you're not. And if somebody that's tuning across you hears that you're not using a voice tuner and you're going very quick, a voice keyer, and you're going very quickly, they tend to stay around. My feeling is they'll tend to stay around a little bit longer. So if you're running, you know, and in phone sweepstakes, you can run 120, 130, 140, but it's only going to be for the first couple hours. After that, it doesn't, I don't think it hurts at all to use the voice keyer for the exchange, because you're just not going to have those kind of rates, and maybe you'll have 2 or 3 guys waiting on you, and 2 or 3 guys will wait. But if you're going to have 7 or 8 guys there, like you might have at the beginning, I find that they tend to stay around longer not using the voice keyer.
Depends on your voice keyer, I guess. I program a real frantic message at the start, so it kind of blasts right through it, and I think it kind of stands their hair on end, and they do sit around for a while.
What year would that be, Dave?
Not mine.
Then is there?
What kind of,
There's a couple of motivation tricks.
Dave, there was a question about
Oh, I'm sorry.
what kind of voice keyers do you use, aftermarket kind?
I use a sound card built into the computer with WriteLog or N1MM. I like the way it does the 2 radio switching. It's really elegant, and the quality is excellent. It really sounds good.
That's what I used to.
The way they do this, the 2 radio switching, is the left channel of the sound card runs the left radio, and the right channel of the sound card runs the right radio. And it's just, you know, a $9 sound card, just doing all that switching automatically. It's really slick, and I can't resist using it. It sounds tremendous. You can make the recordings on the fly. You can change them as you go along, just at the stroke of the key. Your microphone goes through the same sound card, and it gets switched also depending on which radio is active at the time. It's just an elegant way of doing that whole problem, and totally cheap, which I'm fond of also. Just a couple of motivation things during the contest. I'd like to think of S meters being pinned on the East Coast, and people's hair on fire, and roofs burning, and with the signal coming down and just blasting them. It's when there's a little gap and there's nobody coming back, just tell yourself that you're tremendously loud, and it's just a matter of time, and just keep going. And it helps me anyway.
Along those lines, on phone contests, I like to think that I'm putting on a show. It's a radio show, and I'm trying to get people to call in. And so when things get slow, I don't want to be pushing the F1 button to repeat the same CQ message. And I'll throw things in like, I'm in the shadows of the Hollywood Hills, or ridiculous types of things, but keeping in mind that I'm trying to get people to call into my radio show. And that also keeps you a little bit more engaged.
I've noticed after a string of CQs with nobody coming back, I'll say something like, "Is there anybody out there?" And 3 or 4 guys will come back. It's amazing.
You also say, "Is this radio still working?"
Yeah.
And somebody, "Yeah, it's working."
Yeah, it's working fine. What's your call? Kilo Golf 4 Echo something. Okay, let's well, I'm not in the contest. I say, well, you are now.
I heard him say that.
If you're going to submit a score for the club, just keep the club in mind. That may help to keep you going for 24 hours in a row. Just put in full time. That's important. Another thing, during the contest, I don't like to start on 40 meters on Sunday morning. That's another one of those shoot yourself in the foot operations, I think, where the 9s are working the 2s because the sun is up and we're out here. The band is not as good, and I like to start on 20.
Are you talking about phone or CW or both?
Both, actually. Yeah. I don't know how you guys feel about that.
Works on CQP, but probably not good for insects.
I don't know, it works for me. I like to get my 6-hour beauty sleep, and I take it all during the darkness hours, where my station doesn't do so well. So that's maybe just a little quirk of my my operating techniques. By the way, early in the morning on 20, say 6 a.m., something like that, the band opens from the south, and the first people you hear are King Papa 2, and then KP4. So if you need those two, that's a great time to work them, is 20, before the band is open. You can just, if you don't want to go on and do an extensive period of operating, just take a little 5-minute off time period there and work KP2, KP4, and it's a good time to get those because they'll stand out. It'll be the only stations you can hear on the band.
Dave, also, when the band's going long on the first day, just before it shuts down, I've always found get the KH6s, KP2s, KP4s, VY and stuff, that just before the band closes, they'll come in and you can grab it if you do a quick tour, same thing.
Especially King Henry 6.
Yeah.
For sure. Yep. VY1 also late in the day on 20. It's a good time to work that. So, that's all I've got for during the contest things. John?
Yeah.
There you go.
Pretty much the same as Dave had to say. I say choose the band that'll give you the highest rate. If you're getting creamed on 20, now this is directed toward the stations that are not the big guns like Dave and Ken here, but if you're a modest station, you're getting creamed on 20, but you can be heard on 15, it's probably the better choice even if propagation is marginal. And you want to stay on the band where you have the best signal until the rate drops way down. So it's all kind of rate driven. But then again, you don't want to stay on a band that you know will be open later at the expense of a band that you know is going to be closing soon. Once again, if you don't have a good signal, you want to find a clear spot to call CQ because you're going to be creamed. If you've got a modest signal, you might have to go out to a fringe frequency, maybe above 14,300, 14,340 maybe, way up there. But being on a clear frequency is probably going to be better for you than being on a centrally located frequency and not being heard. If somebody moves in on you, only want to stay there if you think you can prevail without losing too much rate. From my little station in the early days, I would keep on going and nobody of course would answer you and you just be wasting a lot of time while the guy on either side of you was taking you out. Of course, on the East Coast, nobody was hearing you. So, don't get into a pissing match with the guy that moves in on you if he's 20 dB stronger than you, because you will lose.
Another thing too, as far as keeping the frequency, it's much more important on sideband to keep your frequency. Sideband frequencies are very valuable. And I don't even like to do single op 2 radio on sideband because of fear of losing the run frequency. I'm just not that good at it where I want to take the risk. So on CW you can always find a frequency. Maybe a little crowded, but you can always squeeze in somewhere. On sideband, you want to persist a little longer, I think, before giving up and going somewhere else, if you can.
If you think you can prevail, then you want to stick with it. But if you're just not making any rate at all and you've been blown out of the water, you got to cut your losses and get going. But the best way to keep a frequency is to have a big signal, and that always works. You just keep on pushing, and the other guy will cease to prevail. Yeah.
John, if you're making a good countless, as I call it, in other words, you're doing a lot of cues, and somebody tries to squeeze you, I've heard of people turn on a processor or widening their audio so they will move away from it. Is that true? I've
Well,
heard of it.
Well, you want to do that, you want to be as, fairly wide to begin with, but
Well, I'm
certainly
saying because
not
it's
to the
not-
expense of not being understood.
No, I'm not talking, you still understood, but you just widen the signal.
Well, another trick is to turn your antenna at them.
Yeah.
You know,
That's two of them.
Let me tell you two others too. I was like,
Don't
man,
forget the
what is it?
Didana.
Yeah, there's two. There's the Rich Didana. What was this called?
The Donna method.
Anyway, he's a K3 now. One is on CW, particularly if guys are crowding you and stuff, you go back up 3 or 4 cues that you've already worked and just keep reworking them. So you're neck and neck with the guy. He's trying to steal the frequency, and you're running through like a hot knife through butter, even though he doesn't know they're cues that you've made before, and he just gives up and leaves. The other is the Glenn Ratman method. The guy comes in and starts elbowing you. You go halfway closer to him again and just keep banging until he gets the message and leaves.
I've actually zero-beated the guy. And just called CQ right on top of it, but you can only get away with that if you
Yeah.
have at least as good a signal as he
Right.
did. If he's got a bigger signal, he
He's
will
just gonna
win.
ignore you.
The other thing is balance your search and pounce rate with your running rate. The better your signal is, the more you can run. If you have a really big signal, you can continue to call CQ forever. If you don't, you may only search and pounce. I mean, you'll call CQ for 10 minutes and nobody will come back to you, then you're doing the wrong thing. So you gotta do whatever gives you the best rate at that time, and the strategy changes from half hour to half hour as the band can, if 15 opens up wide, there's plenty of room to call CQ. That might be the way to go. A lot of things you hear on sweepstakes that slow you down would be unnecessary verbiage like "please copy" or "good luck in the contest" or "I copy your number 2314" or stuff like that. That's referring to Dave over here, of course.
I hit him, Dave.
I like to use lots of short CQs. Dave already mentioned that. You want to keep your speed up at all times. I have a general rule. If there's 3 guys in my pileup, I'm going too slow. I mean, you want to go as fast as you need to go to keep your pileup down, and then you can start slowing down in order to start picking up the guys that don't go that fast. I mean, at some point you might slow down to 20 words a minute on CW just to get the Sunday driver guy out there that doesn't copy anything faster than that. But it better be pretty slow before you get down that slow. And as soon as things start picking up, you just ratchet right back up again. And once again, the way to do as well as you can is to spend as much time as you possibly can in the contest. If you only spend 3 hours, you're going to get a dismal score. If you spend 20 hours, you get a much better score. There's some other things that you've got to consider if you're going to win the sweepstakes. This is what I've gone through so far, is if you just want to do well. If you want to win, the thing that the winners have in common is an extraordinarily good signal on all the bands, very experienced, very good operators, reliable, good quality gear, the best gear you can. Now there are 3,000 different calls being logged, maybe somewhere in that neighborhood, but we only work 1,500, 2,000, 2,200 guys. Where are those other guys that other people are logging? Well, you got to get them somehow. You got to find them. How do you get them? Well, a lot of those guys are calling CQ. They'll get on for 3 hours. They'll call CQ to be new meat. And if you don't come across those guys during those 3 hours on whatever band they're on, you will never get them. The other thing is, a lot of guys will just search and pounce. So if you're a winner, you're going to be calling CQ all the time. Never stop calling CQ. Use that second radio to search and pounce. You must be an SO2R operator or a multi-operator. You must use packet if you are multi-op or assisted. You got to give your call sign every QSO. And you got to figure out ways to get other guys to call you that wouldn't ordinarily call you. You can't really solicit QSOs in particular, but you can tell everybody, hey, sweepstakes is this weekend. I could sure use your help. Maybe if you get on and find me, that would be nice. You can't make schedules with guys, but encourage people to work you and nobody else. I've even heard of situations where guys will get down on 75 meters and check into a traffic net and invite everybody to go work them. I'm not sure if that would be productive or not. So you got to pull all the rabbits out of the hat if you're going to be the winner of the contest. And you know, beyond that, there's even more tricks that you can do.
John,
There's a
can I
few
just
of them.
ask you, for your listening for the first 3 hours, let's say the guys that are CQing that may not be on later, is that what you're using your second radio for? You're constantly combing the bands in the first 3 hours?
Constantly combing the bands, and I'm calling anybody and everybody, even if I've got a fairly decent run rate going, and I hear a guy that I know is not one of the big guys in the contest. You know who the big guys are. You know who you're going to get tomorrow. But if you hear an unfamiliar call, you know that guy might only be there for an hour or two. I better snag him right now, even if you have to kind of take a little bit of a dip in your run to do it. Okay.
Oh, you the president?
Well, maybe it's gonna come up later, but you talked about the pileup. Would you, maybe later, would all of you address who you work in the pileup first? Because I've heard two different.
I will always work the guy that I know isn't going to stick around. That's the guy that has the big familiar call.
Yeah, and I'll work the guy who's the loudest and has the familiar call, because you know that he's gonna get what you say and you're gonna get what he says, and then you're gonna be able to get on to the next guy.
Plus you can hear the weaker guys under him once you get rid of him.
Yeah, the
Not
leader
only
guy's
that,
gonna
if
stick
you don't
around.
work him, he'll cover all the other guys on you. You're screwed.
Yeah.
You gotta work.
Okay, so you always, you agree, Dave?
Well, pretty much, I usually, I think I'm only able to focus on one call at a time, and I just, whichever one I get, I'll zero in on that and just come back to them. Don't go through a big
I've
convoluted.
also heard some say, yeah, I work the weakest guy, because the big guy's gonna still be there, because he'll come right back on, well, wait.
Maybe not.
How do you get his call, though? I mean, if you get his call sign, that's okay, but how do you do that when it's a loud guy
You can hear
obliterating?
K3LL, but you can also hear WD4 something, or you know, maybe that guy feels like I'm so damn weak, because you pass him off and then off he goes.
I figure the weak guy's a little more desperate. He's going to stick around.
The only other time I won't work the loud guy, if I hear a weak guy like he's a mole, I know I need this. I know
Well,
I need
that's
BY2.
good.
Here's what I'll do though, because I know this other guy's gonna pester me in the hammer. If W0, if NOAX or somebody's calling me, I go, NOAX, stand by, VY2TT. And that's another way to handle it. Tell the big guy to shut up. Because if you don't, you start working the little guy, he'll just come right on top. He may not hear the little guy, and he'll cover him. You gotta
Anytime
remember,
you-
the other guy
Most
doesn't
big
hear
guys
what
are a
you're
little
hearing.
more courteous than that.
Yeah, I think so. Anytime you hear JA in the background, really weak,
Yeah,
it's
it's
a
a
J.
Japanese voice.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's VY1JA. You always have to be tuned to that, because he does a lot of S&P, and he's usually weak, he's usually off to the side.
And it's good to be friends with Jay. If you're buddies with him, he'll look for you and he'll get you.
He'll stick around. If he doesn't
Yeah.
get you on the first time,
Yeah.
he'll stick around.
Well, okay, there's a couple of points with regard to, I'll start with CW. One is, what speed do you want to use? And typically, at the beginning of the contest, I'll start out at 36 or 38 words per minute. And then, as the rate slows, drop it from there. If, though, nobody else is calling and somebody comes back to me at 22 words a minute, I'm going to drop to 22 words a minute, because I don't want him asking for repeats and I don't want him to go away.
If nobody is around, do you also drop your CQ rate?
I rarely drop my CQ rate below 30 for the whole contest. And if there's somebody who's slow that I hear in a pileup, and there's a couple guys calling, I won't drop the speed necessarily as much, because I figured if he's the third guy in the pileup, he'll have gotten all my information in the first two exchanges. So by the time I'm giving it to him, he knows what he's listening for.
Okay, but supposing you don't have a pileup and it's Sunday afternoon, do you slow down?
I usually don't slow down below 30.
I'll go down to 26. As low as 26. And I'll go high in the band too, to attract some peripheral guys. I think a lot of people who are not seriously in the contest hang out on the high end of the band. So I'll do some 26 word a minute CQs up there.
Anything you can do to get the casual operator makes the difference between winning and losing, because everybody works, all the big players. The difference between winning and losing is to get the guys that are casual.
Oh, that brings to another point that I wanted to mention, which is where in the band do you want to operate? And on CW, I call the trenches between 30 and 50. 14030, 14050, 21030, 21050. Same for 40 and 80. And that's usually where the real big guns and the real big signals hang out. And as much as I can, I want to be in there because that's where most of the guys that are tuning are tuning. Now, there are times where if I can't find a good frequency in the trenches, I'm going to go and I'll drop into the extra portion of the band for a while. But I don't like to stay there too long because you don't want to just be getting the extras. You want to be getting the generals also. So if I've been in the lower extra portion of the band, my tendency is to try to jump to the higher end of the band to pick up the more casual guys where they're listening, where it's not as crowded. But I find that as much as possible, I want to be right in the trenches where everybody else is.
There seems to be more and more operation in the extra bands on CW.
Yeah.
In the past few years,
Yeah.
now that the extra is 5 words a minute, if anybody gets on CW, they were automatically got the code 5 words a minute mastered. So it seems to be spreading down into
Yeah.
the
And with their
extra
MFJ code reader, they can read his 36 words a minute.
Maybe that's what it is. Another thing that I find is useful on CW is where there's a lot of people calling is to turn the AGC off and then turn the RF gain up. It just, for me, it makes it easier to copy, and I don't like to leave the AGC off. But especially at the beginning of the contest where there's a lot of guys calling, I find it makes it easier to pull call signs out, as opposed to having 3 or 4 guys that all sound like they're just as strong.
That's one of
And
my
so you're,
favorite
so you're
things.
writing the game down, so
Yeah.
you get rid of
Yeah.
just here,
Yeah, hopefully just the top guy, and then
Right.
you back it
Right.
off a little bit, and
You can actually discern between the various layers that way.
Otherwise, the weak guy gets brought up by the AGC in the middle of the
Right.
spaces between the strong guy.
And that they all get run together. But if you've got the AGC turned down, you can hear them all, and they're separated by loudness as well as tone.
another thing is that I try to use a second radio right from the start. If you have 2 radio capability, and you can put up 3 or 4 QSOs an hour in the first few hours, they're just as valuable as the 3 or 4 QSOs in the last few hours. And as long as you're not giving up anybody in your run, it makes sense to use it. And there just is this, it's like a traffic tendency where guys will come in bunches, and you'll work them, and then you'll call CQ for a minute, 2 minutes, and nobody will come back to you, and you can squeeze in a QSO on the second radio, and then all of a sudden 3 guys will plug. And that happens in phone, it happens in CW. There's no rhyme or reason to it, but I think it's important to be aware on the second radio right from the beginning.
It's being posted, that's what that influence is though, is you're being posted, so
Well,
all of a sudden,
it could
5,
be
6
that
guys
too.
come at you, and then you're busier as hell on
It could be
BFOA.
that too.
But yeah, no downtime,
No.
no downtime. Always be working somebody.
The other thing I found is I have low stacks on 10, 15, and 20, and I find that it's valuable to split the stack, have the low antenna pointed more north, the high antenna pointed more east. And that way, if I hear somebody calling in from Alaska or VY or Washington, and they're weak, I can go to the low antenna, and I don't have to turn it quite as much in order to peak them. And you don't really give up that much by splitting power to the high antenna. And if there is somebody weak and and he's a 1, you can just go to the high antenna. And that's about what I had, apart from what's already been talked about.
Looking at my list here, I see one other thing that I have listed for CW. I like to use lower sideband on CW, that is CW reverse.
I do too.
When you do that, you tune from the high end of the band to the low end. It's just the way the tuning works, and I think you run into more stations that way. and you encounter more stations, and I think it's more productive. And if somebody else is S&Ping the band, you don't end up following him, working up the band. You collide once, and then he goes his way, you go your way. So I used to own a TS 930, and the 930 was set up that way by default. And I started doing that then, and I've kept doing that all those years, even after I got rid of the 930.
Same thing with me, 9:30, can't do it any other way now. How about after the contest?
After the contest, I think it's important to make notes for next year. Right after the contest, while things are still fresh in your mind, I tend to put them on my 3830 report. As much for my benefit in reading next year, that's where I file them. I just put them on my 3830 report in the comments section, and then next year before the contest, I'll go back and read those. And I'll read some other 3830 postings also from big scores, and to kind of refresh myself as to things that I could have done better.
Could you
last year.
explain the 3830 report?
The 3830 report, the 3830 reflector is a mechanism for posting your score after the contest. I forget the website right now. but it's
Contesting.com.
Contesting.com, and then 3830.
It was a form and you just fill in the form on the web or something?
Yes. Fill in the form, there's a space for comments. And I like to make lengthy comments that I find interesting, and hopefully other people find interesting too, and go back and look at those. There's an archive that you can go back and look at for the last few years, and I'll review those prior to the next contest. In looking at your log after the contest, just inspect the entire log. It's a tedious process, but just make sure that there are no obvious errors in there, like a section in the call sign field, or just totally obliterated sections or names. Or
There's a tool, the WT4I, that's available online, and it will check WT4I, and you can Google it and find it. And it will go through your log, and if you don't have a number in your call sign field, like you type Whiskey Oscar instead of Whiskey Zero, it'll detect that for you. If there's a section that I guess the program itself now make sure that you have some realistic abbreviation. But if you've done something like a key bounce early in the contest, and you've copied number 1141, when it's clear it should be 141, those are things that you're only going to pick up by taking a brief scan through your log.
Is there still a fee for WT4I? I think it was like a $50 package.
It includes a Cabrillo converter. It includes. I use it to customize my super check partials. I don't do this for sweepstakes, but for the DX contests, I take my log checking reports or UBNs, and if I busted a call, I'll add the call to the super check partial with a paren B, closed paren at the end of it, or a paren N for nils, or a paren U if it's a unique. And that way, if I copy that same call, and I've got it that it was a unique last year, or I wasn't in his log last year, or if I busted it last year, I'm going to definitely ask for a fill. And it takes a little bit of time to do that, but it's surprising that, 6, 8, 10 times a contest in a DX contest, one of those will pop up. And what's really annoying is when you busted a call the last year, and he sent you that call twice this year. and there's nothing else you can do except put that call in, and you're going to get it busted again.
Several times I've had people that are obviously working on a computer come back to me as N6N0. They punch the 0 in the computer.
Yeah. And vice versa, the WO instead of W0
Yeah.
or something.
Nothing you can do.
But those.
You have to tell them. The guy didn't realize he punched the wrong key.
Actually, you don't have to tell them.
Well,
But
I want the contact though.
Well, you'll get the contact, he just won't.
Yeah.
You'll be in his log, he won't be in yours. Or, no, it's the other way around.
It's the other way around.
Yeah, because I always invariably get, it's not so much in the local contests, but when you work with some JAs, you get the pioneer operators who's still working on a bug or something like that, and he'll send us a call 3 times with 3 different calls.
Yeah.
You go, pick one, you go, hopefully it's one that you recognize, but it's like, uh-oh, pick one.
JS5 HSH.
You know, and you can send anything in that whole thing, you know.
Well, that's what the super check mark
Right.
is.
If-
Well,
If he's not the only call up there, you might have made a mistake.
After the contest, of course, make sure you put Southern California Contest Club
Yes.
in your club entry. Southern California Contest Club, all spelled out.
No abbreviations.
No abbreviations.
Yeah.
You submit your log, they email you a receipt, keep your receipt, and after a while, they come out with a list of logs received. Make sure your log is in there. That's about all I have.
This submission is not to the 3830 though. This,
No, it's a different issue.
Whoever is the contest.
3830 is it's sort of an immediate feedback where you can raw score, claim score,
Claim score.
claim score.
It comes from, it used to be after a contest, guys would congregate on 3830 and give their scores.
Yeah.
And this is just the electronic form of it, and still, after contest, guys do congregate on 3830. Not as much.
Right.
Varies by contest. Yeah, yeah,
so for sweepstakes, this would be a Cabrillo file sent into ARRL.
right.
Yeah.
Right.
The good thing about 3830 is you could always go there and take the highest score you heard and add 20 and you got Danny's score.
Oh, and one thing I just wanted to mention, there's this article, North Texas Shootout 1991 Sweepstakes Contest by Randy Thompson, K5ZD, and I think this is the best sweepstakes article that I've ever read. It just captures the flavor of sweepstakes, and I like to read it the morning of the sweepstakes just to get in the right frame of mind.
There's that couple of copies right here.
And yeah, but it's just a really well-written article, and it also does point out some strategy things that probably don't apply as much from the West Coast as they do from North Texas, but it'll put you in the right frame of mind.
A couple of years ago, or a few years ago, I latched on to a copy of the Northern California Contest Club Sweepstakes Handbook. And I made sure
Which you copied and sent out
I
as
don't
the
know,
Southern California
I can't remember where I
sweepstakes.
got it. But I went through it and verified that all of the tips in here have been covered.
Hey, be careful, we have a mole in the room.
But that's the old handbook.
Yeah, it probably is.
Well, the new one is How to Win Unlimited, Club Unlimited.
We have our tricks. I mean, I can share those if
No,
anyone's interested
we-
because
we
we're not
read
really
about
in
it.
competition.
One thing that they do is have a pre-specified meeting place for NCCC members. If I remember right in here, it's listed as 35:45 at 11 p.m. local time, where they get on and kind of do a mix of CQing and S&P to make sure they work each other on 80. It's something we might consider. I don't
That's
know.
what we use our unlimited category for an awful lot. is
Hey,
working
John,
on
you're
other
always
members.
asking people in the club to work this. You need to get a frequency like that. Just say, show up in this frequency. Asking people to come look for us during the contest, they never do it.
Okay, so
Yeah,
there's one
I had a
frequency.
problem during the DX contest with John. He was out there in Hawaii someplace, and you know, I try to work all you guys when you're in a DX contest. So I heard him, and I said, okay, I'm gonna work him. He's going CQ or something like that. But then I got my tuner tuned up, and I got everything set to go, which took me a while because I was changing bands and equipment and everything. And by the time I got on there, he was gone because he went to searching pounds. You
No, I
know?
probably was on the other radio. Give me
Oh,
another
maybe you're on the
30
other radio,
Give me another
yeah.
minute, I'll be back.
Yeah, well, okay. Anyway, I didn't get you on 40. I got you on all the other bands, but I couldn't get you on 40. So it would help if you had a specific
Okay,
time
Dave,
and
what frequency
frequency.
should we use?
35:45 at 11:30 local.
Did you say 4 or 5?
Yeah.
35, 45,
Is that your local time or
Well,
all?
wait a minute, that's the NCC frequency.
Yeah, yes, it is.
Well, sure, we'll get some of them too.
Yeah,
Oh,
Yeah.
everybody works everybody
They
in
might,
California.
they might
It helps
boycott
everybody.
us.
Well, it's a half hour off in time though.
Okay.
What was the
11:30?
time?
What time?
11:30 California time?
What if we use the same time and frequency as they did?
Well, I don't know, they might.
That could make a
get,
clash.
No,
Might get
that's
pissy about
fine.
Well, I don't know.
It's more cues.
30, so-
We're
More
fine
cues.
with
It's
it.
just more cues.
Morning or afternoon?
Is that morning or after?
Evening on 80 meters,
Okay.
So this would be
Let me,
Saturday evening.
Saturday night.
Yeah, let me update that a little bit. For the past few years, we have added a Sunday early afternoon 40 meter that is
Not a bad
actually
idea.
much more productive
Yeah.
than the old 80 meter 75 meter thing ever was.
Pick a time and
Of course, you have to figure out what that is. And actually, I don't know, except to say that it is around, and where you'll see it is in the packet spots. If you don't know it, you just watch the packet spots and West Archer. It is fabulous for Sunday afternoon. You miss all those guys in the clubs that you never were able to find on the high bands.
Yeah, I think we all ought to get together and work with each other.
Yeah.
Everybody wins.
Although
Absolutely.
recently on 20 meters, I've been hearing the local guys, I mean, weak, but still definitely copyable.
It's usually around, I think it's either gonna be like 12 or 1 o'clock on 40 meters.
And even if you got 4 or 5 extra cues out of it, you won't worth it. I mean, the difference between winning and not winning the contest might only be 10 cue sims.
And when you say winning, to me, it's top 10. So, you know,
Well, I mean, when I say, I have 2 categories of winning. There's winning the contest, which is #1 in the country, and doing very, very well in the contest, which would be top 10.
Just be winning
Well,
something.
if
winning the
we did it-
contest is Puerto Rico. So,
Yeah.
Not necessarily, Dave.
well, okay, well,
Well,
unlimited.
in-
But I'm talking,
in,
if you're talking about B,
Yeah.
in the B category, or even in the A category is possible, but tends to be more in the Midwest. So.
We know that we can do it in multi last year, so multi. So,
But in the very well category, and a lot of people here learn a little bit about it, SS. If you participated last year and you made 100 cues, this year you want to make 300 cues. You know, that's the
Yeah, that's
very
definitely-
important to have that goal thing that you have in
Yes,
front of you.
yes.
And you know, if I made 1,200 in a bottomless sunspot cycle, and we're still there, I want 1,500. You know, and that's so. And as a result, you may be first in San Diego, or you may be first in the division or something like that,
Yeah.
which is another thing.
And another thing to keep in mind is, you know, last weekend for CQP, conditions were relatively great.
Yeah.
Terrific.
I beat my LA record from a couple of years ago, which I couldn't imagine would be possible without 10 meters.
At the bottom of the cycle.
So, you know, the conditions are the same for everybody, but they still can be pretty darn good.
One other thing I did that nobody's ever talked about before, for some reason I wasn't playing the whole contest. I was gonna get in, work a few hours, so I got on CQP and put in several, just, well, I thought it was gonna be 6, turned out to be 12. One thing I will do, if I'm not trying to get in the top 10, I'm not trying to win anything, play to increase your rate if you got a good enough signal, but the other thing is, get people, newcomers, to play. And tell them what the exchange is and be very kind to them so they come back the next time. Because once they say, "Oh, this is fun," this is how you get the occasional guys to come back and jump in the contest. And that's important to get more blood in there, more new blood.
Ken, can you say something about both mechanics of recording your contest and then also kind of the essence of your article?
Oh, okay.
Rusty, about what do you use the log checking report for afterward?
Okay. Well, I've used a couple of different methods of recording, and now what I use, and what's definitely the easiest, is to record to hard drive. Write log has a function. That's what I've been using now, is write log, and it has a function. It's just, you know, record audio, and you just click on that, and your audio gets recorded in 1 hour segments. And I use a codec that, let's see, it's, I think it's either 16 or 8 kilohertz stereo, 32-bit, and a 48-hour contest will fit on one CD-ROM. And the audio quality is such that you can barely discern the difference between your radio live and your recording. And then what I do after the contest is I just take that contest, burn it to a CD, and take it off the hard drive. Were you asking something, Dennis? Or?
What's the raw amount if you before the Kodak?
Well,
you're doing it while you're running this Kodak while you're recording it?
yeah, yeah, and it's just built in. You can select it. You can select it in WriteLog, and I just call it SO2R, and it records in stereo. And I use the same codec for phone as I do for CW, and it's.
So it's built into WriteLog, you don't have to add a piece of software or anything?
No, and WriteLog probably uses codecs from Windows, from one of its audio, or whichever sound card you have. I don't really know for sure. But I just know that I just select this one, and I selected it based on a 48-hour contest being able to be burned onto a single
Do
CD-ROM.
you know what kind of file it creates? Is it MP3 or is it a?
No, it's a
WAV file?
it's a WAV file.
Okay.
Yeah, it's a WAV file. And WriteLog also creates a data file along with the WAV file so that you can click on a particular QSO and hear the 10 seconds before it and that particular QSO, which makes it easier when you get your log checking report to go through it. And in terms of the log checking report or the UBN, basically I think it's important just to look for patterns, because you tend to make the same kinds of mistakes. I know I found I made mistakes between JH and JS. I made more mistakes percentage-wise on the second radio than I did on the main radio. And once you know that, if you hear a JS and you're not sure it was a JS, JH, you ask for a fill. On the second radio, I'll listen to the next QSO or be listening to the prior QSO to make sure that I have the information correct before I enter it, from the second radio. You can look and see if maybe you're not paying as close attention to the serial number, or you're on phone. There's certain letters that you're getting wrong. And usually, if you look at a couple of your reports, the kind of errors that you tend to make will jump out at you. And the most obvious thing that I found was not mistakes that I was making, but mistakes that other people that made QSOs of me were making, and that is that they, in phone contests, would put LA for Los Angeles. My call's K6LA. LA is LA, but it's LAX. So in phone contests, instead of saying Los Angeles, I say LANG. No, that's a CQB joke.
Start that.
Lima Alpha X-ray.
I say Lima Alpha X-ray. I don't say Los Angeles anymore in a phone contest. I say Lima Alpha X-ray, and the rate of errors went from 5% to 0.5%. And that all you have to do is look at your report and boom. I mean, that was just so obvious, and the solution was obvious, and it was simple. So that's what I look at first, and then the other thing is I will listen to the errors that I've recorded, and every once in a while you go, hey, I got that right, but that's maybe 5 or 10% of the time. The other time is, I just copied that wrong, or I asked for a fill in a different part of the report, and I didn't pay attention that I should have asked for a fill in both items in the sweepstakes. Sometimes, you're a nil. How can I be a nil? And you listen to it, and it sure sounds like you worked the guy, and you listen 2 or 3 more times, and you realize he wasn't working you. I had one with K6NA in the sprint, where he called the guy, and I called the guy. And I figured it was the same time, and I figured, oh, well, NA, LA, and CW is not that much of a difference, and I worked them. And when I listened to it in the recording, I could hear, oh, yeah, he was in there. And the very next sprint, the same thing happened. Except because I was aware of it, I held back for a second, and yeah, K6NA was in there. So, you know, you can learn from these things, and you can apply it, and it can improve your score.
It's also important to remember that the mistake in the call letter is a double deduction. So if you get
Yeah.
one thing right, get the call right.
Well, and then the other things, and it's not so much applicable in sweepstakes, because you do get the Sunday afternoon drivers and whatnot. But I noticed that if I'm not real sure about JA, anything missed in their call, they have this great habit of coming back again with their whole call.
Yeah.
And so sometimes I'll just intentionally leave out, you know, the first two letters or whatever, and just say 3 ABC or whatever, and they'll come back, and I'll go, yeah, I'll have it there already in, but, you know, but I'll just go, you know, 3 ABC, and they'll come back and they'll fill it for you to be sure. But yeah, it's just, it's because it hurts you if you don't have the call right. And so intentionally making a mistake.
The first year I joined SCCC, I got a group of, I think about 22 guys together, and we analyzed all the log check reports, the LCRs. And then we followed that group the second year. We had people making error rates, score reductions as a percent of their score, which is 10, 15%. So there was a tremendous improvement the second year by just making those people aware. So what Ken said is exactly right. If you get interested in it the second year, you get a boost.
Well, I was going to cover some of the things that you want to do if you want to be #1 station in sweepstakes overall. I mean, it's one thing to do well, it's another thing to win your division, but if you want to be #1 overall, you got to come up with some proprietary equipment and tactics to get those extra 50 Qs that you wouldn't have gotten, and to avoid making the mistakes. And at W6YI, we were #1 in multi-single last year, and I think a lot of that had to do with some proprietary secrets that we came up with to avoid making mistakes and to get the extra 50 Qs. There's probably more that we could do, but I think everybody has their own little tricks in the bag.
Yeah, you just let Dan operate, you called it a multi-single.
Well, that part of it wasn't a secret, but yes, if you can,
4 operators in 1.
if you can find somebody that is genetically deformed and
With
has
4
two
arms.
brains and can work your station, that will help. But no, we actually, you know, Dennis and myself and Jim and Dan were all there, and we kind of put together a little team, and we were doing stuff that you know, Dan was obviously the head guy of the thing, but we were all helping out. The other way you can win is to
Well,
get...
wait a minute, what are some of these proprietary things? Don't
get on the team, and we'll show you what they are. The other way to win would be to get on a category that you can win, such as unlimited or multi. The other way to win is to move to Texas, or to get rent a superstation in the Virgin Islands or Puerto Rico. So,
Or to, you know, do a Tanya Harding on
Yes.
K3Q.
Send Guido out to take care of her left finger.
but you know, we've proven that we can do well from California, and you just have to pull that. You have to push the envelope right to the absolute limit, and just pull some more tricks out of the bag and squeeze every last Q sub. I mean, you might not think 10 or 15 Qs is that much, but it is.
What was your margin at YI last year over the next closes?
I think we actually had fewer Qs, and they missed a mult.
Yeah, that's what it came down to.
Wow.
And it's not that they missed a mult, is they miscopied a mult. They put down CF instead of WCF. And that's all it took.
Yeah.
One tiny little mistake to lose the whole
One
deal.
letter, we lost the whole contest.
Wow.
They killed us from Colorado, literally.
Yeah, they beat us by 8 or 10 Qs.
They obviously didn't look at their log carefully
They will
after
this
the
year.
contest.
That's right. Everything that you do
They will.
contributes to winning.
Now, when you talk about winning, are you talking about an individual score or the SCCC score?
I'm talking about you and your team winning.
All right, now what is the SCC total score, what does that represent? Is that a winning
Well,
club?
yeah,
Is
that's the
club getting-
combination of everybody in
Right,
this
but
room here.
is there an
Club
award for that?
competition.
Is there some status for
Yeah,
that?
sure, absolutely.
Yeah.
But we're gonna have to get a lot more people involved. if we're
See,
gonna win
there's categories. There's the unlimited club category, which is over 50 logs submitted in both contests.
We can't do
We come in the under 50
Yeah.
and not the small. The small is what, 5 or 10 logs, some small number. And usually we'll come in at 36 or 38 and we'll have the highest per capita score.
Yeah.
But the only years I think that we've won was when Larry made a really big effort and we had 49 logs submitted and we won the medium category.
Last year, we came in second in the medium category. I think it was the Southeast Contest Club that beat us. They had, I think, 46 log submissions, and I think we had 36.
Yeah. Soon, everyone in Tennessee will have a license.
Tennessee has the highest per capita of hams, it's amazing, and they are a one-hop to them, is like, wow, they just keep coming, they keep coming.
So the club competition is really a function of how well the spearhead guy organizes it and gets people excited about the contest. It's always been that.
All right, now, what do you have to do to become a part of that?
Submit your log and put Southern California Contest Club on
Do
it.
you have to be listed as a member of the club before you submit it, or?
Send an email to the guy, I say I'd like to be, who's the guy now?
Norton N6AA is.
Just say, I wanna be a member, that's it, there's no dues, or,
And there's no dues or anything.
just say, I wanna be a member.
Okay, so you just submit a log and you say, my club is, and you put the name of the club in it,
Yeah.
and then that will be added up by the league,
Most
Yeah.
programs
and
ask you. what-
they'll total it up, and they'll say, okay, this club is first place, this club is second
Yeah.
place, okay.
That's your own, and you have your own log, of course.
Yeah,
I mean,
What is it, the NCJ is probably the best contest reporting venue that we have? National Contest Journal?
Not on sweepstakes, though.
Not a
Sweepstakes,
no, that's, okay.
Yeah, QST,
And online.
yeah, online. It's all online now, all the scores. They hardly report anything in the magazine.
You have to make the top 10 to get your call sign at QST anymore.
Yeah.
Yeah. But all scores are listed online.
so SCCC should be making an effort to get 50 people to submit logs then, right?
Well,
Well, I don't know.
50 people in the air would be nice.
Except for one thing, the club just doesn't usually make that effort.
Yeah, I mean, you know, if you get
In the
enough people
surf.
excited, you know, I'm not particularly excited about it myself. I don't know if you
I think we ought to go to LA and recruit gang members.
There you go.
Bright knuckles.
But I don't know what it is, you know, when we did this clinic 10 years ago, I ran numbers on it and stuff, and I think Ken's observation was correct, that the average Southern California Contest Club guy had, what, double the score of the average Northern California Contest Club, but they have the Thundering Herd, you know what I mean? So total points, they end up, you know.
Well, I think that year too, you made an effort of getting a commitment
That
from enough guys.
NCCC is run like a business. We're compulsive, and of course, we're in the unlimited category, so it's a very big deal.
You got lobbyists and everything?
Actually, absolutely, we don't shoot people, no, we don't do
Get
that.
an Abramoff subpoena?
It comes back,
And we have this HMO concept, highly motivated operator, where you actually operate 2 different stations on the same weekend. And by doing so, they think, I've never been personally convinced this was this great an idea, except that it does motivate people, and that's good. But the idea is, because by becoming fresh meat on the second day, and operating with 2 different call signs at 2 different stations, you're gonna get more total points than if you operate in one station.
Yeah, we get multipliers twice.
You get the multipliers twice. It's not that obvious, Ken, because if you're, first of all, if you have a less than a high power station and you don't get all the multipliers in the first 12 hours are pretty close. Let's say you got 70, then you're down 10%. If you're not real familiar with the other station you're operating on the second day, you might be 10% less efficient.
Well, yeah, but if you get anything more than 10 multipliers, you're ahead of the game.
Then if that station didn't even get on there at all.
Because multipliers are worth a lot more than QSOs, and QSOs are easier to come by, especially if you're fresh meat.
it's not that clear cut. The difference is not as big as you would expect if you work through the numbers.
Still
Although
works for you.
For a large station, for a high power, very, very good station, it obviously works really, really well. Where it doesn't work quite as well is when you get down to the lower power. Because of course, remember, there are a lot of guys that get on for sweepstakes on Saturday and then would appear on Sunday and vice versa. So it's just not as clear cut. And
So you have a lot of operators who sacrifice their own personal score for the benefit of the club.
that's why someone here made a comment about they're more unlimited. Participation in the unlimited class these days. If you go back and look at the numbers, the entire increase, or 90% of the increase in the unlimited, was the NCCC using that technique. That's why the unlimited class went up in popularity.
I guess it'd be fun to operate the contest twice and do the, because the second day it's real slow, so you get two first days of the contest.
It's a lot of fun to do the group effort. If you have people, and it would be really easy for SCCC to do it in the medium category, because you really probably could. By going out and recruiting new members, we've done a lot of that. We have a very active member recruiting programs, WCZZZ and others. We've scoured logs to get people that were participating a little bit in the sweepstakes, and we go and sign those people up. We dropped our dues requirements, rather controversial, but we did that. We made it, the year I was VPCC, we made it much easier for a person to get in the club. We used to have this complex procedure. Well, we invented this thing we call provisional membership, which works okay with our constitution bylaws. We can sign them up on the spot and then get the needed membership approvals later, and all these things combined together. It's really exciting, and we have a big meeting in October every year, and N6RO gets up, and a few other people. Of course, Rusty Epps, W60AT, really organized a lot of that effort and came up with this HMO idea. So it's really a lot of fun. And
How does the HMO work? Is this multi-single or
No.
single op stations?
It's all done single op, and you simply go to a different station and use a different call sign. And then the other person maybe comes to your station and uses a different call sign. And
But then he misses Sunday score if you, let's say you just split the days, right?
yeah.
You get a big first day score, you'd forego the second day.
Well, yeah, you can't
right?
operate two
Right.
stations at once.
And then you'd get another, well, not quite a first day score, but another fresh feed score out of the second station.
That's right. For example, the first year we did this, now I have a second call sign. I have the NC6CC call sign that became available a few years ago, and I grabbed it. So I got that as the Christmas Tree Hill Amateur Radio Club. That's the neighborhood that I live in. We have 2 members, or something like that, maybe a few more than that. So on the first day, I operated at the home of WK6I, Jeff Stye, as NC6CC. Made a bunch of cues. I then drove back to the Bay Area and operated N6ZFO from my home QTH on the second day. And because of the fact that you run out of stations in sweepstakes, that works. Because you can rework a lot of those guys using different calls. It's as simple as that.
Why couldn't you have worked both calls in your own station?
Because you run out of stations to work in the sweepstakes. If you're a
Or
fairly
why can't you
big
change your call sign at your station in the middle of the contest?
Yeah.
There's
not
a
legal.
rule against it.
Yeah, there's a rule against it, simple as that.
But then, so how could somebody else come to your station and change your call sign?
You have to operate, you have to use different rates.
You have to use the QTH as a call sign, right?
I don't think it matters which call sign you use, but you have to use, I believe, a different transmitter. There are some fine points here, and I must admit, I don't know all of them. And,
So you change your transmitter, right?
Here, I'll give you mine.
well, the person that uses
Well,
your
I've got
station-
two exact similar, no, the same, 2 TR7 radios. I mean, I gotta go take one out of the cabinet, put it there, and then the other
I
put it back.
believe that is correct, but, I'm not an expert on that.
Yeah,
I know the
okay.
concept, but not the details.
So do both stations get operated for 24 hours under different call signs?
They can, but that doesn't have
Different
to.
transmitters.
That's right. I think
12
that's-
hours on one transmitter on one call, 12 hours on another
That's
transmitter.
what it sounds like, isn't it?
Well, now, actually though, you can operate more than 12 hours
Oh,
if you
correct,
want to.
yeah.
Right, you can
15.
operate 15, 15
Total of
or,
30, right.
you know, 2010 or,
Right.
there's different ways to do it. I'm not sure what's optimum there.
So what percentage of the club is involved in this type of operation? Is it a high percentage?
In fact, it's a fairly small percentage. 20% of the stations maybe. You can kind of look and see because, but what people had to be retrained about is you give up your personal score because you're never going to make a high score because you're only operating one day. And
So some guys are willing to do this and some are not.
some aren't, that's right. But an awful lot did. And an awful lot of people were going to the unlimited class. And you do better. No question about it. And what surprised us was you do better in large part, not because of getting multipliers, but in finding new stations to work.
Especially on CW.
Yeah, we'd always thought of unlimited as, oh, it's easy to get multipliers. But actually, the big benefit is you get more stations. And then we do these little rally things, which have to be done. You have to do this a little carefully, because you're not allowed to arrange schedules. So we just kind of suggest, oh, maybe people would like to show up in this frequency range around stations at that time. We don't make this too formal, and we've checked the legality of it, if you want to say that with Dan Henderson. There, it was kind of improved. So we do stress the ethics of it, and make sure we're doing things correctly. And I wouldn't have been able to tell you about this 2 years ago, but now it's, we've written some articles about it, and it's out there in the open world, or it's going to be shortly. Others are duplicating it. But again, our clubs are not in competition because we're a different size. I think you can have a lot of fun here. A lot of guys really like to do this. You can get 50 logs, and then that's the way to maximize your club. You would win. There's fabulous stations down here. It's a great place to operate from. It's just amazing. Much better propagation down here than in Northern California, I think.
Any more questions? One last quick thing is, in sideline the people operating the station, what I do when I'm not trying to win and not trying to train people, we have San Diego Contest Club call or their call. So I offer them to come by, and I'll work a bunch of guys, and each guy use their own call. It's all new meat instead of a multi-single at N6KI. That's another thing. So I give people the opportunity to get lots of fresh meat.
Okay, well, I'd like to thank our panelists, and we'll do this again.
I gotta run because I've got a dinner appointment and it was a 2-hour odd drive to get down here, so.